and alternative education programs to see that it is easy for us to scale and also sustain the program. Our foundation's biggest passion is identifying ways to enable children thrive in whatever situation they find themselves. So equip them with the right skills that would ensure success now and in future. Yes. Okay. Can you hear? Okay, yes, is on mute.
Okay, yes. Thank you so much for that introduction. We appreciate the work you're doing. It's pretty amazing, all the things that you do. I think right now we've given enough people enough time to join the conversation. At least we've given an extra 5 minutes, okay, 3 minutes, so we can just get right into it.
Yes.
So you, in your introduction, you already explained what Flexisaf does, right? Basically the work that you've done, the states that you have already reached out to, over 200 people
Flexisaf Foundation.
Okay, Flexisaf Foundation. I think a lot of people do not even know the difference between the two, Flexisaf and Flexisaf Foundation. So let's just use this opportunity to know what exactly Flexisaf does and what Flexisaf Foundation does.
Okay, so Flexisaf EduSoft Limited is our for-profit company that has been in existence for over 10 years in the education sector. They provide educational software and other solutions to schools, tertiary institutions, and the education sector at large. In their database, they have almost 600 schools and tertiary institutions across the country in almost every geopolitical zone. We have clients, including outside Nigeria. Recently, Flexis have had some clients in Ghana as well. So, yes. So they also work with national bodies like the National Examination Council. They've worked with NIDA and some other educational bodies. So this is Flexisaf, that's the for-profit company. So out of the passion to really impact the education sector in Nigeria, which we are all witnesses to how much decay there is, Flexisaf rolled out its foundation. And the major purpose of the foundation or mission is to ensure access to quality education for vulnerable children. So there are actually two different foundations, organizations, just like MTN Nigeria and MTN Foundation. Same thing, Flexisaf and Flexisaf Foundation. We all know that even before the pandemic, Nigeria had one of the highest, has the highest number of out-of-school children in the world, as every 1 in 5 children that are not in school are in Nigeria. So we really found this to be a place to be, especially because of our expertise and experience with use of technology. And we want to see how we can use technology to rapidly contribute towards solving the menace of out-of-school children. So I hope this was clear.
Thank you. So very briefly, just tell us your work, basically, Flexisaf Foundation and Flexisaf Limited leverages technology, am I correct? So,
yes.
But then when we hear technology, we're thinking artificial intelligence, robotics, etc. But then we're also talking about vulnerable children here. So I would like to know, what kind of technology do you employ at Flexisaf Foundation in reaching out to vulnerable children? Okay, your microphone is muted.
Okay, sorry.
Yes.
So yes, if I understand you, what you're asking is, we are talking about technology, and all of a sudden we're saying vulnerable children, yeah?
Yes.
So how to make the connection between technology and vulnerable children? So you see, it's just like using the smartphone. Nowadays, there is no group in the world that doesn't use the smartphone.
Okay.
You find MTN mass service providers mass everywhere, because communication has become incumbent to achieve on everyone. And this is something that is a trend. So a few years before then, you wouldn't have imagined someone in a poor household ever holding a smartphone, or your smartphone doing a lot of things, especially this Zoom meeting we have
Mm.
now. We couldn't have imagined it happening. But this is the strength of technology. This is the richness of technology. The more you explore, the more you find that there are more things to achieve with it. So we actually know that it might not be easy. It's a far cry in Nigeria, but definitely we have implemented a few approaches towards getting kids to learn through technology. We developed e-learning content and modules that these kids learn through, and you find that they learn even on their own. So most of the modules are in local languages. So you see, this is also a work of technology. The teacher doesn't
Okay.
really have to be there to facilitate. It's just to it's just for the teacher
It's
to
the
be there to
process.
supervise, yes. And this makes it easy for us to cover the skill gap. So where you find that a teacher is not really up to capacity with some topics, especially sciences, life skills, there are video modules. And while the kids learn, the teachers also sharpen their skills. These are all contributions of technology, and it can be achieved in any setting. So for example, if you use tablets, if you use customized tablets to take to these groups, or if you use screens, you can just use your projector and project whatever you want to play for them. So it's easy. You have a low-cost projector and a screen, and you go to their classrooms, to their community, local settings, and
Okay.
you play something like that, and it's in their language. So as it's playing, they are following. A few minutes later, you ask them, they can repeat whatever it is. So you know, TV has always been fun. This is one of the approaches that we have used to actually find out how kids in marginalized groups and other people can learn through technology. Another way is through the smartphone. Some companies have programs that you put in a few codes and you access materials. So even though these materials are a bit haphazard, and ours is
Or
actually aligned to the Nigerian curriculum designed by, we are aligning with the NERDC, which makes it qualitative. So at the end of the day, you find that a kid is learning what they are supposed to learn, not just everything here and there. Thank you.
curriculum.
Yes. Sorry, I didn't get that.
I mean, yeah.
Yes, I can hear
Okay.
you. Yes. I think you are muted. Yes.
Okay. I think my internet connection ceased. Okay, so let's not put the horse before the cart, right? Let's pivot to online learning in itself. Why
Yes.
exactly is online learning so important at this point? Let's just hear your thoughts on that.
Yes. So, online learning, especially in Nigeria, is not really something we saw coming as an immediate thing. But this
Yeah.
COVID-19 pandemic has opened our eyes, like it has opened the
Mm-hmm.
eyes of many educators. And it is even imperative during a pandemic to ensure that learning never stops,
True.
because now there is a crisis and you have to keep people productive. You have to keep people engaged with productive activity, from educators to their own students. And you really have to align with what UNESCO is referring to as the learning never stops
Yeah.
movement. So at this point, we know that we have to achieve social distancing. So you cannot even try going to a classroom. You're even supposed to stay home as much as possible to limit the spread of the pandemic. So online learning is the most viable option to use at this point to ensure that every child is engaged with productive activity, and their educators as well.
Okay, thank you so much for mentioning that, especially the campaign of learning must go on and learning never stops. The one that UNESCO is championing. We think, even here at Skills Outside School Foundation, we think it's a very important movement, and we are also doing our best to lend our voice to that cause. So, earlier in the introduction, you were talking about how some of the approaches that Flexisaf Foundation is using in ensuring that students, especially those in secondary schools, are learning. You talked about projectors and content that's in indigenous languages, right? So
Yes.
what other approach is Flexisaf Foundation using to help secondary school students adapt to learning outside a classroom, and most especially those that have not been regularly exposed to digital learning or are so used to the face-to-face interaction that you find in a classroom?
Yes, so that's actually Flexisaf EduSoft. So
Okay.
at the onset of the pandemic, just before the lockdown, a lot of schools reached out, a lot of educators reached out to say, how are we going to implement this? You know, all this while we've actually been creating awareness about
Mm,
e-learning, but people are taking their time. And then
yes.
all of a sudden, you find that you're even desperate. So it was actually a very busy moment for us too at Flexisaf, because it was at that time everybody realized this is something they need to make work. You find that at the beginning, even the educators don't even have the skills. So if
Mm,
the educators don't have the skills, how are they going to step it down? So what we do is we sit with you, we find out what are the skills gap in terms of delivery. Most private schools, or if not all private schools in our clientele, already have supportive parents of the online learning. So it's actually easy for them. So, but you know, the educators are not really ready. So the first thing we do is to identify what skills you need to deliver these modules and continue ensuring that kids continue to learn. Then after that, we use capacity building. We build your capacity. It can be done online too. It happens all the time. We bring you up to speed with the several approaches you can use to achieve that, and which are the most viable options. It depends on what the school can afford and what other people can actually key into. We bring in several ideas for you to choose from. So you decide which one works for you, and this is how many schools have continued to learn. And as for those that are not used to learning completely through online, even some private schools have that problem. What we
mm,
do at first is we ask them to take it easy. Take it easy at first. Take your time, figure this out, and let the children come into this gradually and enjoy the process.
okay.
So
So
many
safe
children, yes,
learning.
yes. So let them come in gradually and let them enjoy the process. You find tweets here and there from teenagers nowadays saying that, okay, they prefer to learn like this. They don't have to go back to school. So yes, so we also have those types of feedback from our clients. And for those marginalized groups who are working to design programs, and we also hope that very soon a lot of things will be done, not just depending on government, but even from private organizations. Others can also bring in their contributions and see how every child is carried along and no one is left behind. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for harping on the fact that it is very important to carry everybody along. In fact, a lot of the things, your responses are already taking me to some of the other questions I want to ask you. So, but let me just pick this one. You talked about um, identifying the skills gap, especially with the teachers themselves. So I want to know, in the work you have done so far, what are the skills gaps that you have seen, like from the field, the data that has been collected from the field? What gaps, especially, have you seen?
So most of the gaps we've identified are with use of technology.
Okay.
Some of the teachers are not even aware that this is something they can easily do. It's like they find it extremely intimidating. You know, the first time you're going to use an application or something, especially if there are people around, there is always
Mm.
this apprehension: how is it going to turn out, and so on. So we actually find a lot of teachers not having enough skills to have the digital, digital kind of mindset. So at first we start from the basics. We say, okay, so how equipped are you with certain basic applications? They have that. Then when we introduce SAF SMS to a school, we
Sorry,
have to
what
train
was
them.
that, please? You introduced.
Okay, sorry, yes. Sorry, I've not introduced our most popular software, which is the
Okay.
SAF SMS, Simple, Affordable, Flexible School Management Software. This is one of our most
Okay.
popular products used by primary and secondary schools.
Okay. How does that
Yes.
work? How does it work?
So it's a school management software, like a one-stop shop for an educator. You install it into your system and you can compile results, you can use it for your accounts, admissions, everything. So you should definitely check it out.
Okay.
There's a lot to see from it. Yes, if you go to flexisaf.com, the first pop-up you definitely see will lead you to SAF SMS.
Okay.
So from the SAF SMS, we actually it starts leading us to some of the skills they actually need and they can't really deliver with. Then when we eventually introduce e-learning to the schools that are interested, we still find some of these gaps and fill them. So we take it step by step. Actually, there are a lot of skills gap amongst our teachers, and this is why we encourage a lot of schools, private schools, public, even the unity schools, to don't relent on building people's capacities, because
Yeah.
that's when you really get the results you want. And after some time, they actually come back with feedback that yes, they are actually making a lot of progress. So before, you find that if you're going to compile results, students have to wait a whole week before coming to get their results. But with SAF SMS, you've already been entering your past assessments, and as soon as the exams are over, you just enter them, and in a day, it has generated compiled reports, sent in all of the things you need, and the next day, parents get their children's
Oh, a
um,
very automated process.
yes, very automated, and it's actually very, very comprehensive and well, easy to use for many. Yes.
So, earlier when we were also speaking, we talked about marginalized groups and how
Yes.
your organization is working on designing something. And this brings to mind another question that we had in mind. Okay, before I get to that, let me just quickly say something at this point. You were still talking about the skills gaps with teachers. And you said one skill gap that you or your organization has identified is around the area of technology use. I'm also curious because at SOSF, we do a lot of work around life skills. Do you see, have you come across such in the field, like skills gaps in the area of communication, teamwork, collaboration, and the likes, problem solving, and perhaps even critical thinking? Have you come across these with teachers in the field?
In fact, to be honest with you, yes.
Okay.
Yes, we know that this is something that is quite common. We don't even know we have such gaps. That's where the problem is. So if you don't even know you have a problem, how do you solve it? So we
True.
encourage, yes, we encourage educators to say that, look, you really have to work on this and that, and communication is important for you to achieve anything you want to achieve. So yes, we find these gaps in life skills. In fact, for our own groups in the foundation, working with the marginalized children, every 2 months, there has to be mentorship training for our instructors. And this mentorship training is mostly, we also deliver content that they are supposed to teach in the classroom, but of more priority to us is those skills you mentioned, like the communication, critical thinking, problem solving, and is when you engage these teachers to get into challenging feats, like the use of technology,
Yes.
designing of very effective lesson plans, identifying where there is a gap, and gently, just gently letting them know, okay, so how can we do this better? And allowing them to come with the solutions themselves. So they know that, look, I'm up to this. That's what you're trying to make them understand. And
Mm.
you keep identifying this, you keep bringing in experts to cover these gaps, because if they are there, trust me, whatever kind of technology you want to employ or whatever you want to work with, it's not going to work. You
Yeah.
have to first solve those very basic problems, like the life skills you're mentioning, especially in terms of communication and even understanding their own jobs and valuing it. Because you find some people, some teachers are just there because they want to pass time or they don't have other things to do. So this is why they are there. But if you really make them understand that, look, you're really impacting the leaders of tomorrow, and you're making a huge contribution to the country. This some of them find this motivating and actually pick up the challenge to even build themselves up. They even go reach out to us to even find out which books to read and which platforms to use to build their own capacities on their own. So yes, this is how
Okay,
it
thank
works.
you. So now let's go to the other question I wanted to ask. But before that, again, I'd like to welcome everybody that's just joining us. Thank you so much for taking out the time to join this webinar. And if you have any questions, we'll go through them and collate them and ask at a particular point in the conversation. All right. So, Amina, as I was going to ask about the marginalized groups that you mentioned earlier, um, and I was just wondering. I remember that you said your organization is working on some program designs to cater to that subset of society. But then at the same time, I'm just curious on the approach or the strategy that you have in mind for combating things like poor internet connectivity, lack of electricity, high cost of data, or internet-enabled devices and the likes. What approach do you have in store for combating these real, very, very real challenges?
Yes. So these challenges are actually very real. And we know that even Flexisaf as an IT company, there is not much we can do maybe at a national level. We can only keep working with those who are trying to inform policies around low data costs and bringing in power maybe through solar connections for other groups and encouraging it. But our own mandate is to actually bring in the content, the modules and the platforms for them to use. You know, some governments have adopted the use of TV and radio just to ensure that learning continues for all groups. This has been working in some states like the Kaduna states. We have reports of that working very well. But when you're talking about power and low internet is even a smaller problem compared to those who cannot even access internet at all. So we have many of them that actually exist in this country, and these are the children, we call them marginalized groups. So we can approach it maybe step by step, but this is something that everybody has to key into. The private schools that have the resources to support other public schools can say, okay, so in my case, I want to support one class in a public school, especially the senior classes. So this is my own contribution as a private school, maybe as CSR or something. But our own, what I would
I lost you
advise
there for a
is,
second.
yes. So, but what I would advise is for those that can't really access the internet, they can really leverage on those radio and free TV programs if they have access to TV. And for those that don't even have access to power at all, then those schools should find a way to mark what they are supposed to learn. there are many textbooks out there. So if the school really has a good foundation, maybe even if it is a public school, I've had interactions with some public schools in Abuja, and some of them are actually doing well. So to say that for math, this is what you have to achieve in math in a week or two, and you know you have to give them space, because this pandemic time, some kids are at home and they have to help with chores. You have to really put in people's concerns and personal issues too at hand, and make it as flexible as possible, using their textbooks to say, okay, from this page to this page, we're going to test you. So even if it is once in 2 weeks, via phone or a platform that is viable for now, you can deliver those tests, and those public schools that are supported can actually deliver. So even if it is not all the classes, at least some classes are covered by some people. And the more people that key into this, the more others would be encouraged to say, okay, this is working. Let me also see how I can contribute. And we can really contribute. But the problem of lack of access to internet, or maybe low cost internet, is something that a lot of people are pushing for. At a national level, you find even the Ministry of Communication is being bombarded. Please make the service providers bring in low cost data to us, low cost data to us. And so far, I've seen them actually reduce the cost a bit. We all use them, we know. So we hope that this continues, and more people have the opportunity to actually be taken along on this learning journey. Yes.
Thank you very much. So, just a quick recap. So, at this moment, Flexisaf does not quite have, is not leveraging technologies that are devoid of internet access, because your focus is on providing content and other support. Meanwhile, when you're talking about things like internet access and electricity, this is where government has to.
Yes. Hello. Sorry. Okay. So, hello. I can't hear you. You have to unmute.
Okay, thank you so much. So
Okay.
sorry about that break
Yeah,
in
that brings us
internet.
back to the poor connectivity issue.
Exactly what we were just
Yes.
talking about. Sorry
Yeah.
about. So earlier we okay again. Let me just say that if any of us have questions, please do well to post them in the comment section, in the chat section rather, and we'll attend to them. And I mean, thank you so much again for joining us. I'm actually really enjoying this conversation and learning quite a lot from you and the work that you're doing at Flexisaf Foundation. So earlier you were talking about when we're talking about the schools that have been jumping on the services offered by both you and both your organization and Flexisaf Limited. You mentioned that sometimes even private schools have issues with adopting online learning. But let me just, but we also know that it's a fact that private schools would fare better than public schools. So, from the data you might have at your disposal, what is the fate of public secondary schools in this era of online learning, and how can they do better?
Yes. So like we mentioned earlier, we many of them in these public schools, they do not really have access to internet or even power, to be honest. Like someone who is even up to task with a lot of things in this country sometimes find themselves in challenging places that they can't really access power. So you can imagine somebody in that kind of group. But we've been working with stakeholders. You asked earlier about if we had any solution that doesn't have to use internet. Yes, we
Yeah.
do. So if you're ready to invest in embedding those modules inside a customized tablet that you don't
Okay.
need internet to access, yes, you don't need internet to access them, or you might need internet at some point, get those saved to your device, something we call the downloading, yes. So you
Mm.
actually access them from time to time. And for those that don't even have access to that completely, because even for that, you would need a smartphone or a computer to
And
access something
electricity.
like that, and electricity as well. But
Yeah.
many of us have radios that play on batteries. And we have governments, yes, we have governments that are delivering content via radio, and the teachers are actually online to teach. So we are encouraging students to actually leverage on these platforms. Do whatever you can do your best. Even as a public school administrator, try as much as possible to enlighten parents to say, look, even if you can't access internet, we have some free content on radio. And many households, even if you don't have a flat screen TV that is so wow, at least you have a TV that you can actually manage to view something with your antenna, that you get free program. So at those times you have power, you use the TV. Then the good thing about the radio is even if you don't really have power, you can use your battery. Buy the
Mm.
battery you can afford, yes, and use it to learn. For now, these are the approaches that are immediately accessible, and we were working. The pandemic is a learning process for everyone, including us. So we are actually working, testing to see how we can really bring it down, encouraging everybody to come and key in. And like I also mentioned earlier, those private schools that have these things easily accessible to them can reach out to public schools that they have good relationships with to say, look, we want to help one class, just one SS3 class, especially because they are also preparing for their WAEC or NECO, and another private school will say, okay, I'm taking one. Then SS3 is taken. Others will now start taking SS2, like that. We find that kids are no longer left behind, even if it is just technological solutions, just one bit at a time. We need a lot of collaborative efforts, not just tech companies to achieve this. Everybody has to play a role in seeing how everybody else is carried along, especially during this pandemic. Yes.
Mm. Thank you so much. When you just mentioned radio being a very good model or very good vehicle, you just bring to mind another organization that we're aware of that SOSF has been, that we've come to know of, Area I. We're aware that they're working, looking at launching a project on around using radios and disseminating the radio sets to communities. So this is in line with this suggestion that you're making. There are lots of other organizations in the development sector that are already working in line with this. So we have a
Yes.
couple of questions that have come in. So we'll just take a moment to take these two questions before we go ahead with the other questions. Are you up for that, Amina?
Yeah, sure.
All right,
If I
good.
can't answer them, I'll tell you. Let's pass.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yes,
So
yes.
the first question is from, I'm so sorry if I don't pronounce this name correctly, please pardon me. Ikpeng Musa, Dr. Ikpeng Musa. His question relates to curriculum and instructional content. He says, from experience, online delivery of classroom-inspired content presents significant problems, right? So the
Yes.
question is, do we have a specific curriculum design for kids online delivery in Nigeria?
Well, we have bodies like the NERDC, National Educational Research and Development Council, and this is the body that is in charge of curriculum design. So
Okay.
yes. So I know he has asked a very good question, because this is what I've been hammering from the beginning, that it's not everything you find online that you actually expose children to. There's just too much content, too much information for those that have
Mm,
access to internet. Yes, and some of those content is not really even so good for the children. So you really have to monitor. But for
mm,
FlexiSaf, yes, there is actually a tailored curriculum that is aligning with that body, the NERDC. And this is strictly what we use to design our instructional materials and modules, strictly aligning to it. So if they say that at primary 2, for primary sciences, these are the topics you're supposed to learn. For primary 1, I know you're supposed to learn living things. These are some
yeah,
of the modules we've designed. And you find that, yes, according to what NERDC is saying, should be learning outcomes for that topic, living things. These are how we design our modules, through extremely engaging video content. So we don't just make content here and there just for people to come and get and learn from. We
yeah,
actually work with the Nigerian body that is in charge of this. And this ensures quality of delivery, like the doctor is saying. This ensures quality of delivery, and it ensures that you are actually on point. So when school
mm,
resumes, whatever you're delivering, you find that these kids have learned them through those content. And it's not haphazard. After living things, this is the next topic to learn, and this is how we design it, and this is how we structure it on those platforms. Whether it is where internet you want to access them, you see topic 1, topic 2 for this class, and topic 3, and then the next class, like that, like that. So yes, our content is not haphazard. It's actually aligning to a Nigerian standard. Nigeria also have that standard. That's good news for a lot of people
actually,
who don't
indeed,
know.
indeed.
Yes, they're actually trying. Yes.
Okay, so just two more questions and then we continue with the conversation. So this
Yes.
two are from Mr. Joseph Ezenwa. He's saying, he's asking, first of all, how Flexisaf intends to get the relevant stakeholders to key into the organization's vision and mission towards driving online learning in Nigeria.
Yeah. So it's difficult, but wherever there is a will, there is a way. So we are
Sure.
pushing. We are actually pushing, and most of these bodies, they've actually started doing something. You know, in Nigeria, we just conclude that government is not working. So when you reach out, you find that there are policies in place, there are programs that have been designed, and they're actually doing their own part. But it's slow. It's extremely slow.
And
We would keep
implementation
pushing.
is always a
Yes,
problem.
implementation, especially at the grassroots level. Thank you very much. This is a very good point you've raised. These programs have been effectively designed, but come and try to
Yeah.
measure the outcomes, you find not much for you to see. Through the foundation, we also know that we can't do this alone. We are working with other stakeholders that want to key in. We are actively looking for funding to see how far we can take it. And for the foundation, our concern is majorly those marginalized and vulnerable groups. We don't really, any ajebo work or any, it's not really our, yes, we actually want to bridge the gap. So we are working, we advocate, we don't just work on the field, we are also advocating to say that every child has a right to this, especially during this pandemic. Learning must continue, and we would keep pushing and pushing to see that this is achieved. But to be honest with you, it's not, it's slow. So we are even thankful to the government that have been able to implement effective learning through TV and radio, because I know that one too might not have been so easy. People don't embrace change like that.
Exactly.
So yes, so we are working to see how we can achieve that, working very closely with most of the parastatals in the with the education ministry. So hopefully something would be achieved. This COVID-19 is an eye-opener for a lot of people. So hopefully it will get less and less challenging, because they've realized now that online learning is really indispensable. Yes.
Thank you so much, Amina. This last question that we will quickly take, this is from Mr. Saru Igbara. He's asking, having identified the challenges and skills affecting the educators, which is very visible at the grassroots level, how is Flexisaf planning to reduce the skills gap affecting the educators? I think you mentioned this earlier, but you could just give a summary response to this, please.
Yes. So the first thing we do, I mentioned it earlier, yes, that we first identify what are those skill gaps. You mentioned a very good point, which is you even find that they don't even have the skills, the necessary life skills to be effective educators. For example, communication skills. They can't communicate effectively with children. And you find that children hate learning when they don't like a teacher. I'm sure you can relate.
Especially for math.
So yeah. So you can imagine, even if it is not just math, there are tough subjects out there, but if you have a teacher that you like and a teacher that really knows how to make learning very relatable and fun, you enjoy those classes. I remember getting very intimidated by physics when I started taking it, but after some time I was able to adapt into it gradually, because I was able to have a teacher that could actually bring in live examples for me to relate with. So those communication gaps are something that you should identify as a body that is managing schools. Like I said, in Nigeria, it's not very easy because the demand is high, and people don't really even understand the value of what you're trying to deliver. But for many of those private schools, they actually easily listen to us when we say, you have to do this way, and this is how you learn. We recommend our partners what we can deliver to them, we deliver to them. Then after filling those skill gaps, this is when we actually start building their capacity towards delivery with online learning. So if you've already, you can imagine, if you can't relate with me one-on-one like this, it's difficult.
Yes.
So how more so when I'm far from you and I have to ensure that I work extra hard to keep you engaged. So this is all something that we work with the educators to achieve. And because they are so passionate about really getting results, they cooperate with us to build those capacities, and they are ready to also get the tools necessary to achieve that. Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. I mean, I think you did a very good job with those questions. So picking up from where we left off, I recall that earlier you were mentioning some of the schools that are within your organization's network. So just want to know, for the sake of data, just to have an understanding, the schools that you keep getting requests from in this period, are they mostly private schools or public schools, mostly in Nigerian states, which regions and which states, just so that we know how exactly online learning is catching on in Nigeria?
Okay, so for the schools in our database, most of them are private schools. I'm sure you're not surprised by that
No,
answer.
not at all. Not
You're
at all.
like, yes. So, but for the tertiary institutions, most of them are federal tertiary institutions.
Interesting.
Yes, Yeah, very interesting. So, but on a large scale, mostly those that are using the software for their delivery are Unity schools, not many public private primary schools. Sorry, not many public primary schools even have access to
Of
even
course.
the offline. Yes, even the
Yeah.
offline that were willing to actually give some people for free. They can't even afford a few tools to actually use to put them for their efficient record management. And for every one private school, one public school we have, there are like two private schools. So we're
Mm,
saying that, yes, it's a large ratio, right? It's a large ratio we're trying to say. So it's like 25-50. So
yeah.
if this, if 50% of them are public schools, it's just half of that number that is mostly Unity schools and mostly federal institutions. Most of them are private schools, especially when it comes to online learning. We don't really have many public schools. They can't really control it. You don't blame them. We don't have many
Yes. True.
public schools even reaching out to do something. Many of them have even gone silent, even with the software
Yes.
used. So really, there is a gap there.
But
So
could you give us an idea of what regions, even if not states, what regions?
that have the public schools or
No, that are keying into tech-aided education in Nigeria.
for the private schools, it's across the country. So
Okay.
all of our clientele, all of the schools in our database, mostly are equipped to deliver these content, even in areas very remote like northwestern Nigeria. For some schools, they are actually making effort. We are even, some of our clients in Adamawa have started delivering lessons via technology online.
Okay.
Yes, so it's actually across the country. Most of these private schools are making the effort.
Okay.
So there is
Very,
no
very,
particular
very good.
zone.
Very good. That's
Yes.
encouraging, at least. That
Yes, that's very
just it's
encouraging.
not isolated to one section of the country. It's very encouraging.
Yeah. So I think many of them realize that if you have to remain in business, then you have to work with what is trending. So,
Exactly. We're willing
so
to adapt and evolve.
that's also a motivator. Yes. Yes.
So, but then, do you think it's possible to conduct online examination? Because if you recall, just before the school closures, schools were planning on writing exams, especially the externals for the senior students at senior secondary level, the final year students. Do you think it's possible to conduct exams via online platforms, and how exactly would that work?
Yes. It's extremely possible. And
Okay.
it's good for us to know that, yes, these have been in existence for a long time. Our e-learning team have already started working with some schools to deliver assessments, even though many educators are coming out to say that it's better to allow people to actually come into the pandemic and get used to the situation before start delivering assessments, because assessments come with their own anxiety. So you're
Mm-hmm.
already anxious, and now there is more anxiety. You have to um, get on track with content you've left for some time to learn. So they are actually planning to start, some schools have even started giving assessments online. For more information on how a school can get this done, they can reach out to elearning@flexisaf.com, and they would be guided towards to all the tools that are available out there, and you can choose an option that works for you best. So
Okay.
it's
So it's not
extremely
possible
possible.
to conduct the entire assessments simultaneously.
So like, you mean all the exams or?
For the people that join your are using your services, that's what I mean. For example, a particular school, they can have all the
Yes.
students conduct take the assessment at the same time.
Yes, as long as you have access. For the exams, you know that it has to be through internet. For
Okay,
now, there is no, yes, offline
exactly. There's no
solution for
alternative to that.
exams. To communicate, you will need a channel, and internet is what exists for now. Yes, everybody takes the exam at the same time. And the questions, we have a way to ensure that you can't really do much. You know, Nigeria now is just open your textbook and I
Exactly.
cannot see you on Zoom. Yes. So we have to really test your understanding. Sometimes even if you open your textbook, you may not be able to attempt if you've not followed through the classes that have been going on online,
Okay.
or you've not
Okay.
really studied the material. You really can't do much. So
Okay, I was actually going to ask that question because especially if they have access to internet, I mean, I could just do a quick Google search.
Google, yes, and tell me what are living things.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yes. So while the exam is going on, we have our own monitoring tools. Like now, you can see me. You can easily see me, and
Mm-hmm.
the softwares are also equipped with very intelligent systems that will detect if you're leaving the page. So if you try to
Oh,
leave this camera and try to Google, I would
oh,
know what is going on your screen. And you can only be able to access the software if you agree to the terms, which will install those smart tools. So
mm,
we have, yes, we have our own ways of making
oh.
sure that things work, even in Nigeria.
A very, very, very intelligent approach.
Very, yes, very, and this is the concern for most educators.
Yeah.
They don't feel like they are ready for online assessments because they can't really trust that the kids are doing it themselves. So
Mm,
firstly, we encourage that if you're doing any online assessment, you must be on video. So my mom will not be next to me telling me English answers in English
yes.
or solving comprehension problems with me. No, it's not possible. You're seeing me as clearly as everybody else, and not just the one delivering the exam is online. You have other supervisors too, like how it happens in classes. We call them invigilators, right? We have people
Mm,
invigilating. And if you try to leave the page, if you try to come back to the page, sometimes you even require to log in again. Like how it happens, I'm sure you have one or two applications that work like
yes.
that. Once you exit
Yes.
that platform, you can't access it again. So even the
True.
students themselves, they are actually quite intimidated by it. Many of them are cooperating not to even try any hanky pankies here and there. So for now, this is actually working, but we'll keep identifying challenges, learning from them, and seeing how we can keep improving with them with our stakeholder networks.
All
Yeah.
right, perfect. So again, I encourage everyone, if you have any questions, please, you could just drop your questions in the chat section and we'll ask them on your behalf. Don't worry, you'll have your opportunity later on to also make comments and other opinions or submissions that you might want to make. So Amina, let's talk about tertiary education. I know that all along we've been talking about that in little snippets. Due to the large number of students, cost structure, poor infrastructure, etc., these make the adoption of online learning very difficult, especially in public universities. So how do you think digital learning tools can be infused for tertiary level students, especially people studying courses like medicine or even vocational courses? How do you think we
Yeah.
could circumvent that?
Yes, so thank you for that question because I think it's timely and very important too. And I think our tertiary institutions, I do not know the statistics in numbers, but you can safely say that 80 to 90% of the students have access to internet. You see them on Twitter all the time, Instagram, yes. So there are actually so much they can learn from online, those tertiary institution students. And we have something we call virtual augmented reality. So for the
Yes,
medical students that can afford, you can get yourself a VAR and classes would be facilitated using VARs. You feel like you're in that class. In fact, it uses so much psychological power that even if you didn't touch water, but because there
yeah,
is water in there, you feel like you've touched water.
yeah,
If you had 4D experience in
yes,
cinemas,
yes,
yeah, in cinemas, excuse me, so you actually feel like you're inside the movie. This is how VAR works. And this is one way we really encourage people. Don't wait for the tertiary institution to make provisions. For many parents that can afford it, let them try and see how they can actually get this for their wards to ensure that learning continues, especially for students like the medical students. You can't afford to just leave it for a long time. And for those that don't have access to the virtual augmented reality, there are tons of learning platforms out there. We have Coursera, you mentioned them. I'm sure they're quite popular. And these are just a lot of other things they can explore. Then for those that can't have access even to that, then you find a way of learning offline with the modules that have been created. Every lecturer or educator should have targets to say that at the end of May, this is what and what we want you to learn, and this is what you're going to be tested on when you resume.
Okay.
This is, I know this is one strategy they used in school for us to ensure that we were learning during the holidays. You know, the thing is, actually, nobody is really prepared for a pandemic, but it's real for us to know that while we've really been left behind, there are very few in countries like Rwanda that education has actually advanced. It's not a big deal for somebody in tertiary institutions to have access to effective online learning, because you know this they have structures, well working structures in place to facilitate that. So these are some of the tools I can see. I can encourage tertiary institution students to leverage on. And our content has not reached tertiary institutions yet, but we are working, and hopefully in this pandemic should also speed things up. And very soon we'll also start having content that align with the tertiary levels curriculum for the country. So this curriculum too, I have to tell you, I'm sure you're not surprised that they have to be reviewed as
Of
well.
course. Of
So
course.
yes, yeah, so there is a review going on, and just make the best use of what you have. By the time you're in tertiary institution, you're old enough to even teach yourself. There are many people that actually say they don't even go to classes at all, and they get distinctions too. How did they achieve that? So you see, it's actually them challenging themselves to be up to speed with whatever is taught, and
Um,
seeing how
um,
they can pull through.
okay. I'm especially glad that you mentioned something, because when you talk about allowing the students to learn at their own pace, taking courses on Coursera and other online platforms, learning platforms, I think it also begs the question of being able to adapt to what they're actually supposed to be learning as per the school's structure and the school's curriculum. But then you also mentioned something that some lecturers could also come up with very interactive methods, such as creating learning goals for this month. Okay, so you're for this month or for this week, this is what you're supposed to learn. Go online, find the materials, and this is what you're going to be tested on. I think that would be a much better strategy, rather than just saying the students should go ahead and learn on their own, because in the end, they might, just as you said earlier, there's a wealth of knowledge on the
Yes,
internet, and they might end up just learning anything, and in the end, it's not applicable to what they're supposed to be learning in the classroom.
I
So thank
agree.
you so
I
much for
agree with
that.
you.
So we're drawing this conversation to a close very, very soon.
Yeah.
If you would like to make any contributions or comments, you just hold on, please. We'll get right to that. But lastly, Amina, I think let's just bring the entire conversation to a close and a quick summary. What do you think we should be doing better in the Nigerian education space for both tertiary and secondary school levels to make sure that online learning is attainable to everybody, irrespective of where they may be? And who are the stakeholders that you believe could make this possible?
Yeah. So when you mention the word stakeholders, many people don't actually realize that even learners are key stakeholders.
Exactly, true.
So everybody has a role to play. If I'm a teacher and I'm all the way in Abuja, I'm a lecturer, and my student lives in somewhere like Adamawa, and we still have to interact online, if they are not willing, my job is not going to be easy. So every single person has to come, bring their own contributions. It's a collaborative effort. We can't leave it for government. Government is not ready to take on this challenge alone. Like I mentioned, some of the options we use for our programs in the foundation, encouraging the private entities to adopt public entities. So to even make it more sustainable, we say that, okay, so group A, private school A, you see what you can do in public school A. And we have to put in a lot of efforts to motivate. We can't say government all the time, but we know that there are government initiatives that are working, like the National Association of Private Schools. So if that association can challenge itself to say, we are going to be giving awards for all private schools that are doing well with CSR, trust me, more and more people will key into this. And everybody is a stakeholder in this. Media channels have their own role to play. So I know there is a channel on DSTV that kids
Yes, the
actually learn,
pop-up
but
channel.
like you said, yes, but it's not structured content. They learn, I
Exactly.
agree, yes, but is it aligning to what the country is delivering as the curriculum? It's not. So what should we do? Come together, put your heads together with us in Flexisaf. We've been in it before, so it's easier to just see how you can key in once you have people with experience around you. Come, let's see what are your contributions as a media channel to deliver tailored content. As a network service provider, MTN, for example, what is your contribution? You can choose to say, okay, so for tertiary institutions in so and so geopolitical zones, as CSR, we are going to say that they are going to access these tailored modules for free. It's completely free. You know, for Airtel, I know Airtel has an arrangement that if you are accessing Facebook without viewing pictures, it's for free. You would see it will ask you, do you want to start using data, or you just want to read on whatever is there? So if the network service providers can actually come to say, this is our own contribution, you can access so and so platforms completely free. They are the ones delivering, and this these platforms would actually be free. You will find more and more students actually logging on because they have access to smartphones, even if it is not theirs. You know that for 2 hours a day on so and so platform, you're going to have content for free to learn, and you're going to be held accountable for it. Then at the grassroots level, we also have to encourage our own community leaders. It's not always about interest. You know, at first they approach it with a lot of excitement, but how do we make this sustainable to ensure that these children are actually learning? And we know that online learning right now is just the most viable solution to make it happen. So please, everybody is a stakeholder. Like Skills Outside School Foundation is a stakeholder, Flexisaf is a stakeholder, the government itself has its own major role to play, even if it is just to collaborate these efforts and keep recognizing them. So even if you're not giving an award, imagine just going online to say, okay, I am recognizing MTN for doing so and so and so. That is motivating, right? So
Yeah.
before you find it, Glow would also bring in their own, Airtel will bring in their own, then media channels would also start contributing, private companies, food companies, everybody would actually come on, and this is actually on a very structured, well-monitored platform to see how we can achieve this online learning, including the learners themselves have to be more and more sensitized and enlightened to actually cooperate with their educators and make sure these efforts yield results. Yeah,
Okay. Thank you so much. Um,
yeah.
I think you've done a very excellent job with the questions, and you've thrown so much light on this particular topic. So the floor is open right now. Anybody that might have contributions to make, any submission at all to make, this is your opportunity to do so. We'll just give you a few minutes to do so. Anybody at all. You can unmute your mic so you can speak. Anybody. Okay. Uh, okay, it seems I have done a good job of speaking everybody's mind, which I don't know if that makes me a mind reader of some sort, but okay, yes. Grace wants to say something. Hello, Grace. Would you like, okay, I thought you wanted to say something for a moment. All right. So I think on that note, if there are no comments or any other questions that anyone has for our guests today, we could bring this meeting to a close. It's been an amazing and insightful webinar. Thank you so much, Amina Abubakar, for availing yourself. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing at Flexisaf Foundation. We believe that you're breaking new grounds, and we hope to see how we can collaborate in the near future, hopefully.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's really my pleasure and honor. Thank you for having me, and thank you for continuing to bring such opportunities for people to actually collaborate and brainstorm on issues like that. So I would encourage you to also keep it up.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
For everyone who has joined us today, we appreciate you availing yourself, the time that you've spent with us. We can't say thank you enough. So on that note, this session has come to a close. And if anybody wants to connect with us, you can follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and on Twitter. And you can also sign up for our newsletters, and we'll definitely keep in touch. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Amina. So the meeting is ending.